For 30 days, I lived alone on a raft, adrift on the endless blue of the open sea. When I first set out, the idea seemed almost romantic, a test of self-reliance, a chance to disconnect from the noise of modern life, and an opportunity to discover what happens to a person when the world shrinks to the size of a floating platform. But as the days unfolded, I learned that solitude on the water is not the stuff of daydreams. It is a crucible, one that strips away illusion and comfort, revealing new truths about survival, resilience, and the inner landscape of the human mind. The raft itself was simple but sturdy. A rectangle of weathered wood and plastic drum, just big enough for a small tent, a few supplies, and a solar-powered desalination unit. Before I left, I stocked it with a month's worth of dried food, a fishing rod, some emergency gear, and a journal. My only connection to the outside world was a satellite phone, kept in a waterproof case for absolute emergencies. Once I pushed off from the shore, the world I'd known receded into memory, replaced by the endless expanse of water and sky. The first day was exhilarating. The sun rose bright and golden, painting the waves with shifting patterns of light. The surface of the sea seemed calm and welcoming. I spent the morning arranging my supplies, setting up the tent, and taking inventory. The sense of adventure was intoxicating. I fished for a while, though I caught nothing, and ate a simple meal of rice and beans as the horizon glowed pink with the setting sun. That night, I lay under the stars, lulled by the gentle rocking of the raft, and felt completely at peace. But as the days passed, the reality of isolation set in. The vastness of the ocean was beautiful, but also intimidating. An endless, indifferent expanse that cared nothing for my presence. There was no land in sight, only waves and sky, stretching in every direction. The sounds became my constant companions. The slap of water against the raft, the whistle of the wind, the distant cries of seabirds. Sometimes a school of dolphins would appear, leaping and playing nearby, their presence a brief, joyful interruption to the monotony. Routine became my survival strategy. Each morning, I woke with the sun, often chilled and stiff from the night air. I checked my supplies, made sure the desalination unit was working, and filtered enough water for the day. Breakfast was usually oatmeal or a protein bar. I fished whenever I could, gradually learning the patterns of the sea and the habits of the fish beneath me. Some days I was lucky and caught enough to supplement my meager rations. Other days I went hungry. Hygiene became a challenge. Fresh water was precious, so I washed sparingly, using seawater for most cleaning. My skin grew rough and sunburned, despite my efforts to cover up. The salt left a constant residue on everything: my clothes, my hair, even my food. I learned to ration toilet paper, to improvise with whatever I had, and to accept discomfort as a fact of life. But the greatest challenge was not physical, it was psychological. In the absence of human contact, my thoughts became louder, more insistent. Small worries grew into obsessions. Did I bring enough food? Would a storm appear without warning? Was that pain in my side something serious, or just hunger? Without the distractions of daily life, my mind turned inward, replaying memories, inventing stories, and sometimes conjuring up fears that felt all too real. At times, the loneliness was overwhelming. There were days when I longed to hear another voice, to see another face. I spoke aloud just to remind myself of the sound, narrating my action or singing snatches of song. I wrote in my journal, pouring my thoughts onto the page. I talked to the birds that landed on the raft, and once when a sea turtle surfaced nearby, I found myself telling it about my day. But solitude also brought unexpected gifts. As the days passed, I became attuned to the rhythms of the sea, the way the waves shifted with the wind, the subtle changes in color that signaled a coming storm, the patterns of birds and fish that told me where food might be found. I learned to appreciate silence, to find peace in the simple act of watching the sky change from blue to gold to deep indigo. I discovered reserves of patience I never knew I had. Storms were the greatest test. On the 12th night, a fierce squall swept over the raft. The wind howled, the rain lashed down, and the waves tossed my tiny home like a toy. I lashed myself to the tent frame and clung on as the raft pitched and rolled. All night I fought fear, convinced that at any moment the raft would break apart or capsize. When dawn finally came, battered but intact, I felt a surge of gratitude simply to be alive. After the storm, everything changed. The familiar patterns of the sea had shifted. Debris floated past, branches, plastic bottles, even the battered hull of a small boat. I realized how vulnerable I was, how thin the line between safety and disaster. I inventoried my supplies again, repaired what I could, and resolved to be more careful. The experience left me humbled, but also strangely empowered. I had survived what I feared most. I could survive again. Food became an ongoing challenge. My dried rations dwindled faster than I'd expected, and fishing was unpredictable. I experimented with different baits, tried fishing at dawn and dusk, and learned to spot the shadows of fish beneath the raft. Some days, I caught nothing. Other days, a single lucky catch would provide a feast. I learned to savor every mouthful, to appreciate the simple pleasure of a hot meal, even if it was just rice and fish, cooked over a tiny camp stove. Sleep was elusive. The rocking of the raft was sometimes soothing, but more often left me restless, especially when the wind picked up. I dreamed of home, of family dinners and warm beds, of the comfort of a hot shower and the sound of laughter. But morning always came, and with it, the practical tasks that kept me grounded. As the days blurred together, I lost track of time. The sun and stars became my only clock, the movement of shadows my only calendar. I marked the passing of days in my journal, but the distinction between one and the next grew hazy. Each day brought the same tasks: water, food, shelter, rest. Yet within that sameness, I found moments of wonder, a spectacular sunrise, a pod of whales passing close by, the sudden appearance of bioluminescent plankton turning the water to liquid light. At night, isolation forced me to confront myself in ways I never had before. With no one else to talk to, I became my own confidant, my own cheerleader, my own critic. I faced my fears, my doubts, my regrets. At times, old memories surfaced, unbidden and raw. I forgave myself for past mistakes. I made plans for the future, vowing to appreciate the people and comforts I'd taken for granted. There were moments of despair too. Days when the rain fell without pause, soaking everything I owned, leaving me shivering and miserable. Days when the sun blazed so hot that the raft seemed an oven, and I feared I'd run out of water. Days when I wondered if anyone would remember me, if I'd made a terrible mistake. But always I pressed on, driven by the simple will to survive, to see another sunrise, to make it through one more day. Gradually I became stronger. The routine that once felt oppressive became a source of comfort. I took pride in the small victories, catching a fish, repairing a torn tarp, finding a clever way to stretch my supplies. I learned to trust myself, to listen to my instincts. The ocean, once a source of fear, became a companion, a teacher, even a friend. As the end of my 30 days approached, I found myself both eager to return and reluctant to leave. I missed the world, its comforts, its people, its endless variety. But I also knew that I would miss the simplicity of life on the raft, the sense of being stripped down to essentials, the clarity that comes from solitude. On the final day, I saw land on the horizon. A thin, green line after weeks of nothing but blue. My heart leaped with joy and relief. As I steered the raft toward the shore, I felt a surge of gratitude for survival, for the lessons learned, for the chance to begin again. Looking back, those 30 days alone on a raft changed me in ways I never expected. I learned that I'm stronger and more resilient than I ever imagined. I discovered the power of routine, the impartial importance of self-reliance, and the unexpected beauty of solitude. I faced my fears and came through on the other side, not unscathed, but wiser. I learned that the ocean is both beautiful and unforgiving, a place where every mistake is magnified and every success hard-won. I learned to appreciate the small things: a cup of fresh water, a warm breeze, a moment of peace. I learned that loneliness can be both a burden and a gift, forcing us to confront ourselves, to grow, and ultimately to survive. Most of all, I learned that home is not just a place, but a state of mind, a sense of belonging, of safety, of connection. The raft taught me to value what truly matters: the people we love, the comforts we so often take for granted, and the strength that lies within us all. Now, whenever I find myself overwhelmed by the noise and rush of modern life, I remember those silent mornings on the raft, the endless blue horizon, the simple act of watching the sunrise. I remember that I am capable of more than I thought, that I can endure hardship, and that even in the loneliest places, there is hope. If you ever find yourself longing for adventure, for escape, for a chance to test your limits, I urge you to remember: the greatest journey is not always the one that takes you far from home, but the one that brings you face to face with yourself. And sometimes, all it takes is a raft, an open sea, and the courage to set sail into the unknown. In the end, 30 days alone on a raft was not just a test of survival, but a journey of self-discovery. It was a time of fear and hardship, but also of wonder and growth. It was, above all, a reminder that no matter how small or fragile we may feel, we are capable of so much more than we realize. And that, sometimes, the greatest adventure is simply to endure, to learn, and to come home changed.